Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. Probably the most important and interesting update we got from the Elon Musk, who stated that the Russians found a solution how to suppress his Starlinks and communication between the Ukrainian forces. This is very important. Also, he stated that for the first time the Russians used new equipment at the beginning of a Russian Kharkiv offensive, and they were pretty successful, and now the Russians are using this type of warfare often, very often. Furthermore, we got additional report about the military help from the United States of America, a few more missiles for HIMARS systems, a few more artillery rounds, and many other different types of weapon the United States of America is going to send Ukraine in the very near future. The total cost of the military package is around $275 million. Furthermore, we have about the military packages, we have lots of updates from the NATO. Jens Stoltenberg stated, he asking the Western countries to cancel any restrictions on the weapon they send to Ukraine, asking them to give permission to Ukraine to attack all the entire territory of Russian Federation. And this is very important because, for example, the Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, stated that they're not going to send the Taurus missiles to Ukraine, and the reason that he explained that Ukrainians don't have the necessary, let's say, education, necessary experience how to coordinate and how to program the missiles. So that's why if Germany sends Taurus to Ukraine, that means that they need to send also German officers who will basically coordinate and who will basically, let's say, set up the missiles. So basically the German officers would attack the territory of Russian Federation, but not the Ukrainians. And this is the reason they're not going to send. And this is the reason, once again, we were talking about yesterday, that NATO countries decided to destroy the Russian strategical infrastructure over the entire territory of Russian Federation using Ukrainian hands. Basically, every single attack with drone or oil facilities or some radars or many other, let's say, important military objects were made not by the Ukrainians, but under the flag of Ukraine, but with the hands of NATO and Western countries' officers. And this is very important because the Russians currently haven't found a solution how to act, let's say, the same way in direction of NATO countries, or how to prevent this. The only way how to prevent this situation in the future is to finish the special military operation. But we understand that neither the Russians nor the Ukraine are ready to finish this, let's say, war. Furthermore, the Ukrainian sources continue reporting that the Russians continue concentration of forces on the border, let's say, with Chernihiv and Sumy area. Currently, we don't know for sure the exact number of forces that were concentrated, but most likely the Ukrainians are talking about thousands and more thousands of Russian soldiers. Now let's move to the line of combat contact. We have some updates from Kharkiv direction. We have some photos and videos confirming the results of Russian strike on the railway station that took place a few days ago. If you remember, there was a report that the Russians launched up to 15 explosions in the let's say, borders of the city, and most of them took place in the vicinity of the railway station. And now we have more or less reliable confirmations of where exactly the Russians were bombing and attacking. Furthermore, we have the video showing us the let's say, fly of another FAB in the area of Kharkiv area. This is the FAB, as you can see, and the FAB was let's say, not a guided bomb, more precisely, and then there was significant number of explosions. So this is exactly what, this is probably the very first video from the Ukrainian side where we can see the flight of FAB, let's say, and moving towards the surface. When talking about Liptsi, we still haven't received any updates from the territory, but today Zelensky stated very interesting situation. He's told us, I don't understand what exactly was he talking about, but he told us that the Ukrainians managed to establish military or fire or combat control over the borderlands where the Russians managed to break through and to enter forces on the territory of the Kharkiv area. I don't understand what exactly he was talking about. Obviously, the Russians still control the towns like Глубоко, Лукьянцы, Alinikova, Махровец, Borisovka, Pilna, Strelechna. Maybe he was talking about artillery control, or maybe he was talking about, I don't know, eye control, or how to say, satellite control. Very difficult to understand, but anyway, as we discussed, the Ukrainians started a series of counterattacks, at least on this direction. Now let's move to Vovchansk. We have no changes on the ground, just regular activities, and probably more and more activities, more and more actions are taking place in the eastern flank. Today we have two videos. Let's take a look at the first one. On this video, we can see how the Belarusian volunteer corps were mining and destroying the bridge in the vicinity of Tikha. We see that they were establishing first the mines, then they were establishing additional, let's say, additional ammo to make the explosion heavier. And after, let's say, preparation, the Ukrainian forces destroyed the bridge completely. So this bridge was destroyed by the Ukrainians, as you can see, right? So the question why the Ukrainians destroyed the bridge, probably trying to, let's say, avoid any attempts from the Russian side to cross the bridge in the vicinity of Avchansk. But there was another bridge further to the east in direction of Bachkova. On this, for example, video, we can see how the Russians were destroying the bridge. We can see the Ukrainian light vehicle that was first destroyed as a result of maybe Lancet strike or artillery strike, and after that the Russians destroyed the bridge with probably artillery, and then we have the final confirmation that the bridge was destroyed. And this bridge was destroyed by the Russians. So it's very difficult to understand why both sides are trying to destroy the bridge and why both sides trying to make problems to each other to destroy the same bridges. So as you can see, everything is very complicated. Maybe some bridges are, let's say, working in Russian favor, but some bridges, let's say, existing in Ukrainian favor. Anyway, we're gonna see more and more details, and then we're gonna sooner or later we will understand what kind of games the parties are playing there. Now let's move to the northern Kupiansk direction. We have updates from different mappers that the Russians answered and established some control over the southern part. We have different mappers updates. We have some statements that the Russians captured few streets, that they managed to deal some damage. So the battle for Ivanovka has started. Yet we haven't received any geolocations confirming this, but most likely sooner or later the village will be captured, and then the battle for Stepovo Novoselka will start also. So the situation developing very fast. Also, we have confirmations from different mappers that the Russians are continue improving their positions in Berestova. So the northern part is already under Russian control. The Ukrainians control just one street and one farm. So telling the truth, it's nothing. Most likely 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and entire Berestova will become under complete Russian control. Now let's move to the southern Kupiansk direction. We have some adjustments of the map in Ukrainian favor. According to different mappers, the Ukrainians managed to restore completely their control over the tree lines in the forests in the vicinity of Yampulovka. The Russians, under the pressure of Ukrainian forces, were forced to fall back further to the east and the southeast. Let's move further to the south. Bilogorovka area, no changes, no updates regarding the status of the, let's say, Bilogorovka itself. Chasov Yar, there is no changes as well. There are no changes as well, just a few videos of how the Russians were hunting and destroying the Ukrainian armored vehicles along Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, probably armored vehicles that Ukrainians either were trying to send to one or another part, and not to one and another side, and then the Russians were hunting them and destroying them. For example, in this video we can see one FPV drone strike on a Ukrainian armored vehicle. A second later, the Ukrainian sources from their side published another video how their damaged tank was moving along, let's say, Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal under very heavy Russian fire. The tank was set on fire, but he managed to survive after a series of attacks and managed to evacuate this zone successfully. Let's move to Chasov Yar area. According to different mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the fields. The Russians captured this tree line, and the Russians are pushing Ukrainians further to fall back further to the west in direction of, let's say, Stupochki, Pritechna. About the southern Chasov Yar, Klishevka, no updates at all. Now let's move further to Cheretina, Avdiivka direction. We have updates that the Russians continue offensive operation in direction of Novoalexandrovka. According to information we have, the Russians managed to answer and to bypass additional few buildings and half of the street, and we have FPV drone support from the Russian side. So the Russians are very active, very aggressive, and very focused on this direction. Most likely they will continue, and this is something like the battle for Ivanovka. This is not something that would be stopped somewhere in the middle of the operation. The Russians are planning to establish complete control over the village, which may lead to collapse of Ukrainian defense belt on this direction as well. Now let's move further to the south. We have some interesting geolocation from the road between Nitailova and Yasnobrodovka. On this video we can see how the Ukrainian FPV drone was FPV droning the let's say, some abandoned armored vehicle, and according to the author of that video, it was difficult to understand which the armored vehicle was damaged by the Ukrainians. Maybe the Russians, maybe abandoned Ukrainian. Some mappers also continue updating the maps, showing additional Russian progress further to Yasnobrodovka. So if we summarize every report we have, so the Russians currently control something like this. So the Russians are about to start the final battle for the village itself, and after that the Ukrainians will lose their foothold and will lose everything on this side of Karlovka water reservoir, just this small residential area. But I'm not sure that the Russians are going even to move there, because it will be very difficult to do this, obviously. Now let's move to Krasnogorovka. We have additional update from the city as well. The Russians, as a result of offensive operation, raised and established the flag in the most central part of the stronghold. On this video we can see the Russian flag waving on some construction, and which confirms additional Russian progress. As we discussed in the previous updates, we have significant progress from the Russian side. Most of progress wasn't, let's say, confirmed by the sources. If you remember, the Russians established complete control over this part of Krasnogorovka, over this part of Krasnogorovka, and over this one. But it's about different mappers. But just today we received some updates about the central part, so the Russians reached the main park, and then which confirms that most likely the Krasnogorovka is about to be split in two parts. Now let's move further to the south in direction of Paraskoyevka. The Ukrainian sources continue claiming, more precisely the forces of 79th Air Mobile Brigade continue publishing updates that during the previous night, from the 24th on 25th of May, there were very heavy clashes in the central part of Paraskoyevka, very heavy clashes from both sides. The Russians were attacking, the Ukrainians were counter-attacking, but the source reported that the Russians had lots of, let's say, night vision equipment. So the situation basically developed completely in Russian favor, and most likely the Ukrainians were defeated. So the Russians neither managed to, let's say, get some initiative and full control over the village, but the Ukrainians, paying significant price in manpower, managed to hold the lines, but most likely, according to the source, they would be forced to fall back. Also, the sources reported that there were more clashes on the southeastern part of Konstantinovka as well. So the Russians, we can say, continue offensive operation, for now without changes on the ground, at least by mappers, by geolocations, but most likely during the next 48 hours we're gonna start to receive some. During the previous night, in the previous day, the Russians tried to conduct first attempts to attack in direction of Vuhledar using new Russian lovely tactics by the name of turtle tank attack. But this time something went wrong, and the Russian turtle tank was destroyed just at the beginning of offensive operation. So that was a turtle tank that was probably destroyed maybe by anti-tank missile or by FPV drone. It's very difficult to understand. But as you can see, the tank haven't managed couldn't even, let's say, leave the borders of the village by the name of Mykolska, and was basically destroyed by the Ukrainians. So turtle tank tactics on this direction didn't work. South Donetsk direction, we haven't received anything. Gulay Polye, we have additional video showing us the results of Russian FAB attack, FAB strike on the industrial zone in the central of Gulay Polye. According to information we have, that was the air defense base and some ammo depots. So this is the consequences of the attack. So we see that that was not the first and not the last attempt to attack from the Russian side on this direction. Kherson direction, we haven't received anything. So as you can see, the situation develops very interesting. When talking about the United States of America, we have some updates as well from this territory. According to information we have, China, due to the support it provides to Russia, is an active subject of the conflict in Ukraine. This must stop, said U.S. Assistant Secretary of the State for European and Eurasian Affairs, James O'Brien. So as you can see, the escalation between the United States of America and the escalation between China is growing and growing and growing. So this is, of course, plays in Russian favor, but we'll see what is going to be next. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.